Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Ealing Road podcast. We're recording this a little bit late this week, guys, but we are going to be talking about Brentford's 2-0 loss against Liverpool at Anfield on Sunday. We were due to record yesterday, but we had some small availability issues. I couldn't get out of work, but we are here. We're recording on Wednesday morning. Joining me to go through the 2-0 defeat is Craig. Craig, how are you, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks, Mike. How you doing?
All good. All good. Dan, how are you?
All good. Guess we're not going to win the league this season.
No, we're not.
Shame.
I really thought we were after the Palace game. I was so optimistic. I went on too many podcasts, running my mouth, and I need to learn.
We'll finish second, then it's fine. We'll finish second.
We need to. Where's Callum, by the way? We need to get his debut. He can't do the morning one, so we definitely need to do an evening record at some point because I miss Callum's awful takes of the week. We need to get that back.
Oh yes.
Just before we get going, guys, remember to drop a comment down below, subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels, and also give us a follow on our socials. That's at the Ealing Road on Twitter and at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Also, if you saw on YouTube, you would have only seen it on YouTube. But for anyone listening on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts, we are starting to do, based on the comments that we got on the immediate reaction video that we posted on YouTube about an hour and a half after kickoff, I want to say, we're going to carry on doing that basically. There's more likely than not going to be one of us at the game each time. So we're going to get a sort of 5-10 minute video, depending on what happens in the match, out straight after kickoff, hopefully every week. And that will be exclusively available on YouTube. So if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, do go across to our YouTube, just type in at the Ealing Road or just the Ealing Road podcast. You'll find us straight away. Hit the subscribe button, turn the notifications on, and you'll get a 5-10 minute video after every single game this season. Fingers crossed. The feedback on it was really positive, and I promise to anyone that did watch, I won't swing around as much. It's actually quite hard to talk just to yourself outside Liverpool Lime Street without kind of pacing around like a strange person. But that's what I did. So apologies.
I've got a plan for the Southampton game as well, so don't worry, I won't be spinning around if that's one we do.
Yeah. So apologies if I induced anyone to kind of vomit during that video, but the thoughts, the sentiment was there and the feedback was good. So yeah, that will be happening most weeks. So do go and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let's kick things off. I was going to do a tweet of the week section, but we wanted to keep this one a bit short and snappy, considering it's a Wednesday now and it was a 2-0 defeat. But we'll start off with the news this week that first, Nottingham Forest have bid £15 million for Yoane Wissa, and second, there is rumoured to be interest from Chelsea in none other than Ivan Toney. Didn't play again on Sunday, chaps, but we're still talking about him. I think Sky Sports at the moment is the only outlet reporting that there's Chelsea interest. And having done a bit of research on it, I'm not sure. Callum immediately put in the chat that he thinks it's not going to happen. Craig, I'll come to you. Chelsea, Ivan Toney, do you think it will happen? What do you think?
It's the most obvious Premier League move. Let's be realistic. If he's going to move to a club within the Premier League, it's going to be Chelsea, just because they're buying everybody. But it's one of those ones where apparently they've got a new pricing wage cap, a new wage cap, haven't they? So he'll be going from possibly 350 grand a week at Al Ahly or whichever Saudi team it was, to between 60 and 70 grand a week at Chelsea, based on their new cap, which Sky, as you said, are reporting he would be happy to fit into their wage bill. But if he was going to move to a Premier League team, well, it's Chelsea written all over, isn't it, really?
Dan, if you're Ivan Toney and you've got two offers on the table, one from Chelsea, which, as Craig mentioned, would be severely below the wage or the salary that he'd earn in Saudi Arabia, what are you doing?
I think for him and his age and his career now, I would go to Chelsea. Although, again, they're a bit of a basket case club, but obviously they're in the Premier League. He probably will get games there because he is better than what they've got up front. I think for as much money as they spent, they don't really have a top striker, and I think he'd slip right in there. He might be a bit old for them, considering the age profile of some of the players that they've been signing, but I think the Saudi move could potentially still be there in a few years' time, 2 or 3 years' time for him. He's still in his 20s. You know, he could be 31, 32 in a few years' time, and that offer could still potentially be there if he has a good few years at Chelsea. So for his ambitions, and, you know, let's be real, it's still not going to be a terrible lifestyle, is it, at Chelsea? So I think that's probably the best move for him. But for Brentford, I'd much prefer him to go to Saudi, so we never have to play him again, to be honest.
Can you imagine the celebration in front of the West Stand? I can just see it now. I can just see it now.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right, though. Nicholas Jackson as well. I think Chelsea fans will tell you that he's a lot better than what non-Chelsea fans think. And if you look at where he played in La Liga before he signed for Chelsea, he was actually a winger converted into a striker. So for me, it makes sense. I mean, I don't really care where he goes as long as we get a pretty good fee for him. I think once this is all done, we mentioned it in the last podcast, the better. But let's move on to the more pertinent one, maybe. Yoane Wissa to Nottingham Forest, Craig. £15 million bid on the table, reported by Sky News. We spoken about it a couple of weeks ago on the pod about interest from Wolves, but I'd imagine now that it looks pretty much certain that Toney's going to leave, it's going to take a pretty sizable fee, one a lot higher than 15 million from Forest, to see Yoane Wissa leave the club. What do you think?
I think that bids close to maybe 25, 30 would be the ones that maybe Matthew Bennett would think about and let Wissa go. But if Toney goes, Wissa doesn't go. There's no way that we let someone who's playing as our number 9 this season go when Ivan Toney's out the door and Igor Thiago's injured. It just doesn't happen unless we get the right amount of money in. But if one goes, the other doesn't. That's the way I'm looking at it.
Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's too late in the window, because if this is a few months ago or even a few weeks ago, we could maybe review it. If the right bid comes in, we could let him go, and then we'd have time to get a replacement in. But I'm not confident that we would be left with enough time in this situation. And I think we definitely need Wissa. I think Wissa, I can't see him wanting to push for a move away, considering there is an opening now to be Brentford starting striker for most of the season, probably. And I think he can get a good number of goals. I think he can do that job for us. And I think, yeah, he is definitely worth at least 30 million to us right now, given the situation, that we could be in if he did leave. And I think also selling to a potential rival in Nottingham Forest, which could improve them and make us worse, I don't think that's something that we'd want to do at all.
Yeah, agreed. I think just a final word on some transfer business, not in the running order, but I just remembered now. Gustavo Nunes looks to be over the line. I'm told it's over the line, but the news dropped a couple of last week before the Liverpool game that he's turned up with a fractured hip, which means even if he does sign, and I'm pretty sure he will sign, fractured rib. Even if he does sign, we won't see him for a month. But Craig, just typical Brentford fashion.
Typically Brentford that he comes with an injury. Those are apparently unconfirmed reports, but to be fair, 18 years old as well. He's just been involved in 30 games in the Brazilian league as well. He was hardly going to come in and play anyway.
Yeah,
it was probably going to be 3 weeks to a month that we see him. Give him a little bit of a break to settle in as well. But he's been very active on social media, hasn't he? Posting all of the stuff about him being out in London and out at these restaurants. And one of them said, "Welcome to London." So you can only assume that that's done and done. But I mean, the kids just played 30 games. We weren't going to see him for a little while anyway, but very, very, very typically Brentford.
What I will say is if you want to know more about Gustavo Nunes, I listened to a fantastic podcast by the Copper Club and I advertised it on our socials. And it kind of goes into his limited game time in the Brazilian league and how he's kind of, there was basically something that happened at Gremio. There was floods in Brazil. They were badly affected by it, which means they had to sell a lot of players to make a lot of money, which in turn led to Gustavo Nunes coming into the first team. And he's just impressed wildly in his first kind of 6 months of playing in Brazil. So if you want to know more about him, go check out that podcast. It's at the Copper Club. You can search him on Twitter, Instagram. I think they're all over it. So yeah. Last one, Dan, Onyeka. Frank Onyeka looks to be on his way out of the club. Well, it looks like he wants to be on his way out of the club, but I'm not sure if he will leave the club. Definitely one that Callum will be happy about. Valencia, I think, are the club rumoured to be after him. What do you think? Is it time for Frank to go?
Yes, probably. He's probably one of the signings that have underwhelmed the most since we got promoted. I think he can do a job maybe against some of the bigger sides, maybe just in terms of putting his body in the way and tackling and stuff. But I just think on the ball he's not good enough at all. I think it's a shame. It's not worked out for him. And yeah, I guess from his point of view as well. He'll want more football. I can't see him getting into that team ahead of Yoane or Norgard. I think if we had signed someone like Archie Gray in the summer as well, and I think we're still probably in for a midfielder at some point, then obviously that would just see him go further down the pecking order. And obviously we've got a couple of youngsters as well in Yarmoliuk and Konak, so I think we could make do without him.
Yeah, for sure. I think you mentioned it, but I think he might have helped in the Liverpool game. We'll get on to the Liverpool game now. Craig, immediate thoughts after watching?
Not surprised. I'm not surprised. As we come out at the Palace game, you're thinking, oh God, do you know what? We could nick something going to Liverpool. We could really nick something. And then, they just showed how good they are and how well, even after 2 Premier League games, how well drilled they are under Arne Slot, who has impressed obviously in his first 2 games. I'm not surprised. I was hoping that we might have got something out of it, but I will say, through all of the negativity that we've seen on social media over the last few days since Sunday, I think it's probably the best we've played up there in the 4 seasons that we've played. It's one of those ones where we created them problems. They had issues containing us for large parts of that game, and on another day we would have scored. Nathan Collins has that chance, which we're going to go on to, and unfortunately, I hate to say it, but Brian had a bit of a stinker. No, he didn't have a great game on Sunday, and that doesn't happen very often from him. So on another day, things are a bit different. But I'm not surprised. They look bloody good, and it was just so important that we beat Palace on the first day to get something on the board. Having to go into a game against Southampton and possibly win would have been a bit difficult for us, but it leaves us in good stead going into this game this weekend as well.
Dan, what about the lineup, mate? Because we chatted before we started recording about KLP coming in for Kevin Schade. It looked like a back 5, but in defence, it was difficult. You could tell that he brought in KLP because he trusts him defensively more than he trusts Kevin Schade. But what were your thoughts? It was kind of expected, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a bit of a hybrid between the two. I expected us to set up in more of a contained back 5 like we have done in the past. I think compared to how we set up at Liverpool or even at any of the other big teams in the last few years, it was a little bit more positive. It was. We were trying to move the ball forward. I mean, KLP was very, very high, especially when we had the ball. He did drop a bit more when they had the ball, and I do think that's why he brought KLP in for Schade, because he just trusts him a bit more going back that way from obviously his experiences of playing left wing back last season. So yeah, it was kind of a hybrid for me. I think it's a bit in between of a back 5 and a back 4. It's hard to really nail it on. I think Match of Day had it as a back 4. I think the way the Brentford released the team sheet had it as a back 4, but I can see how at times it may have also drifted into a back 5 of KLP coming deeper and Wissa and Mbumo staying high.
Yeah, I think if Kevin Schade was in the lineup, it would definitely be a back 4. But yeah. I mentioned it in the immediate post-match, Craig. Sometimes I do just wish that Thomas Frank saw it as a free hit the same way that we see it as a free hit, but obviously he can't, because I'm sure if we sat Thomas Frank down and we asked him, and if we ever did an interview with Thomas Frank, I'd definitely put the question to him, like, what do you think of fans kind of clamoring for a back 4 when we go away to these big teams? And the first thing that he'll say is, well, we wouldn't have won so many games against the big 6 if we started in a back 4 a couple of seasons ago and we didn't have all those injuries. But like, given that we don't have first choice fullbacks in Rico Henry and Aaron Hickey, do you not sometimes just think, well, fuck it, we're probably going to lose anyway, we may as well give them a good go up top? And if we had Kevin Schade, and that's no disrespect to KLP, because I think he did a fantastic job going forward and defensively, but if we had Kevin Schade and we left that front 3 up top a bit more and looked at him on the counter a bit more, do we not think, Craig, that we might have had a bit more joy? What do you think?
Firstly, after we finished the Crystal Palace podcast, didn't I say to you KLP will step back in? And both of you went, no way that happens.
Did we?
After
we expected a 5. I wouldn't have put KLP there, but it doesn't surprise me.
We would say, what's the formation going to be? I said, a back 5. And then afterwards I said, KLP will step back in. He was like,
maybe I do remember that, maybe. Yeah.
No chance. Do you know what, Mike? You're going to have to ask me that question again, mate.
I said, do you not sometimes wish that Thomas Frank just thinks, let's give it a go.
Yeah.
Let's go with the top three, the front three. Sorry.
I completely understand from a professional point of view that he has to do what he does in set his team up in which way he feels is going to be best to go out there and get a result in a game. And against a team like Liverpool, against a team like City, Arsenal, United, Spurs, when we play them, you don't expect us to go out there and dominate the ball. There are games in which we're going to dominate the ball, like, for example, Southampton coming up this weekend, and then games in which we expect to counter teams, Liverpool, United, City, the games that we've got coming up. That's what we expect to do. Would I like to see it? Absolutely. You know, one game where we just go out there and we just show our offensive strengths that we have in all of those players, in KLP as well, bringing him in Sharda and Wissa and Mbeumo, use them. You know, there's nothing wrong in using them, and I feel like even when we go behind in games like this, we rarely change to a back four to push up, you know, to push up into the offensive thirds of the pitch. It's just, I feel like maybe if he tweaked it every now and then, but I completely understand why he does what he does.
It's something that you said before, Dan, as well, in that sometimes Thomas Frank can be a touch slow to react in terms of maybe swapping to a back four. Whether if we did that a little bit earlier, the game would have got away from us quite quickly. I don't know. But it's like we said, it's difficult for him to view it in the same way that we view it, because, you know, he wants to go into every game wanting to win. And so do we. But, you know, we may as well have a bit of fun whilst trying. I think that's what we're trying to say. Let's talk about the first goal. For me, Dan, I think Yoane has to do a bit better. There's a 50-50 on the edge of the box with Salah. He kind of
turns his back.
I think, for me, I think you should foul him, first of all, because he's not going to get there first. And he kind of does the worst thing that he could have done and turn his back. And you don't do that with Mo Salah. And then I think Thomas Frank agreed in his post-match interview that we could have defended the 2v2 a bit better. But, you know, it's not Brian's natural position to be up against one of the best wingers in the world in Luis Diaz. So what did you make of the first goal, Dan?
First of all, we conceded the exact same goal against Liverpool at the G-Tech last season, the Nunes goal, from our own corner. And like we said, probably then, if there's one team in the whole league who's going to score that type of goal against us, it's them. And I know they had changes to their style, but it's still the same, you know, front line. And we know how dangerous and quick they can be. So perhaps we could have prepared for that a bit better. I think maybe the reason why we went short with some of our corners in the second half was so that we did just keep the ball for a little bit longer and didn't just lose the first contact to allow them to break the other way. So maybe we could have prepared in advance a bit better for that scenario, because I think that's something we could have very well seen coming. But obviously in the situation, you could tell what Liverpool were doing. All the Liverpool players, as soon as whoever got, I can't remember who got their head to it first, but as soon as they got their head to it first, the Liverpool players were running the other way and ready to go. And not enough of ours were ready to do that, anticipating that situation. So, yeah, of course, Yoane should have done better. Obviously, on Match of the Day, they pointed out that Roslev maybe should have just dropped off as well. So that, you know, the Liverpool front line just had to beat him and go around him rather than him stepping into them. But I think as a team, ultimately, I think we could have saw that coming a bit better and planned for it, because like I said, Liverpool are the one team that can do that to you, really.
I largely thought the first half. Go on, Craig.
I was just going to build on what Dan said, and I feel like they counter better than any other team in the Premier League, arguably, with the pace that they've got in their front three, and especially with Darwin Nunes coming off of the bench as well, Diogo Jota, Luis Diaz scoring and Mo Salah. Like Dan said, Match of the Day pointed out an issue in Mads when he stepped. Watching it, so I will be honest, unfortunately, I didn't go again on protest to Liverpool away because of how stinky it was last year in that away end. So I didn't go this year, but I watched it. I did watch it on the telly. Mads, unfortunately, completely took him and Brian out of the game. When he stepped across Brian, he took Brian out of the game completely, which meant when the ball changed direction, Brian had to essentially run through Mads to try and catch up with Luis Diaz. And he's bloody rapid anyway, Luis Diaz is, so he ain't going to catch him, you know. But Mads completely took two defenders out by stepping across Brian to try and challenge him, when I have no idea, like Dan said, why he didn't just step back and make them play through rather than just giving them a clean chance. We're so defensively frail at fullback, and I have an opinion for the Southampton game when we get there, by the way.
Okay, nice signposting there for later.
KLP at left back.
No.
I thought the first half was largely okay, to be fair, and I think into your shout earlier, Craig, that might be the best we've played at Anfield since we've gone there. I don't think that's too, especially based on the first half. Norgard has a good chance to equalise, fluffed his header. Those are chances you can't really spurn when you're at Anfield. But to be honest, like I've got it here in the running. I think even if he'd have scored, I'm not convinced that we would have come out of the game with anything. For me, it was like, and I read some articles after the match. It was like Liverpool were in a training match a little bit with the way that they were knocking it around, especially in that second half when the gap started to open up. The centre-backs didn't really have to run. Brian didn't have a good day. Wissa didn't have a good day. They were just really comfortable throughout. And in the second half, we did start to come more into the game. We sacrificed a bit of control when we got the Collins chance and there was a little bit of momentum. But then when Szoboszlai gets space in midfield and Gravenberch is picking it up, it gets really difficult. And Trent stepping into midfield as well, you just get overrun. And Jensen's just watching Match of the Day back. The amount of yards Jensen was covering just to get back after one pass from Trent would just take out our whole midfield. It was a training match for Liverpool. And the second goal is a bit of a sucker punch because, like I said, we were just about to get into the game. Salah does what Salah does. I think Aya goes a little bit too early for me, Dan, because to be fair, I think it's Norgard's cock up because he kind of passes the ball. I'm not sure who he was looking for, but it kind of comes off Carvalho, and then Carvalho tries to get past the Szoboszlai, but that's a bit of a mismatch. And then Aya's already gone. He's like on the halfway line, and Salah's got a tap in. But Collins' chance, Dan, could the game have spun on that? Do you think maybe?
Potentially, I think it went straight at the keeper. If it had gone either side, then of course I would have backed it to go in. I think Flecken also kept us in the game that second half. I thought he made a couple of great saves. And with the goal, I think Norgard was trying to find Aya, but if he didn't go too early, I think he did also go too early. But if he's gone now. So as soon as we lose that ball, he should be busting a gut to get back, and he doesn't really.
Yeah.
So yeah, and Salah's obviously open, and we're always going to concede if Salah's 1-on-1 and he's open. It'd be very rare that he misses from that situation.
What do you think of the subs, Craig? I thought Damsgaard was good again when he came on. I know you're a big fan of his. Don't think Schade had too much of an impact. Carvalho looked okay. It's a difficult game for him to come on, really. 2-0 down. I think, no, we weren't 2-0 down, but we were 1-0 down. And it was a difficult game for him to come on and impact, especially at his former club. But I thought Damsgaard was positive again, Craig. What did it look like on the telly?
It looked like Fab got a bit lost in the midfield. But when you're playing against the midfield, like you said, of Trent stepping in, Szoboszlai, Gravenberch, it's someone who's 5'4" playing against two obviously 6 foot midfielders as well. He got a bit lost in there. Damsgaard's one of those players that now has set himself up to what's the word I'm looking for here? Not succeed, but look good when he comes on. Every single time he comes on now, we almost expect him to have a good cameo. We always expect him to do well. When for a long period of time, when he was coming off the bench, people weren't too confident with his ability, but that has changed and that has swung since the last 10, 15 games of last season, which I'm very glad about. And I think that we'll see him play tonight as well in midfield. Damsgaard starting. I liked it. I liked him in midfield. I like Damsgaard. You know, I like Damsgaard anyway. But it looked okay. It was just a difficult game. We was never going to have that much time on the ball. Never going to be able to dictate the play in the way that we would want to. So, I mean, it's Liverpool away. Sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Just on Liverpool, before we move on to Colchester tonight and Southampton, title contenders for you, Dan? I think people labeling it like a Man City-esque performance. I've spoken to a few Liverpool fans as well. They were quite happy with the fact that it wasn't end-to-end and there wasn't loads of chances for us. Title contenders for you?
Probably not, because I just feel with a new manager after Klopp being there for so many years, I think he would do one hell of a job to get him still challenging Arsenal and City towards the end. And obviously we get to see them face one of those teams or face a team, top 6, top 8 team, and see how they fare there. So probably not. I think a good season for them would be top 4. I think they probably will get top 4. I think they're probably clearly at least the third best team at the moment. So I think there's plenty to be positive on. Also, they look very good against us. They look good for half of the game against Ipswich. And obviously they'll only build on that. So I think they can be very positive, but I think they'll fall probably just short of City and Arsenal.
What do you think their need for, the supposed or the alleged need for a number 6? I thought Gravenberch against Ipswich was really good, and I thought he was really good again against us. I feel like because Manchester City have Rodri and Arsenal have Jorginho/Partey, there's like a lot of hype around the number 6 position. I was speaking to Neil Atkinson before for the preview as well, and he thinks if they've got enough numbers in midfield and players to cover, he doesn't think that number 6 position is going to be a problem. But I thought Gravenberch was really good for them. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think that's something that they really need to be looking at. I mean, they're a pretty well-rounded team. The only thing I would think that they should be looking at is an out-and-out fullback, and just let Trent step into midfield and do what he does in there. Because although we didn't exploit it, I thought that he was the weakness that they had, was him at right back. And one of the times KLP, all he did was drop the shoulder and he was gone. Trent was gone. So if they could push Trent into midfield, Gravenberch could sit, or even Trent could sit in front of the defenders and just be that ball-playing midfielder. I don't think that's an area in which they need to worry about. It's not at all an area they need to worry about.
Just before we move on to Colchester and Southampton, Craig, you mentioned the atmosphere. I do want to talk about it just because, Dan, you and I were there. It was fucking dreadful. I'm not pulling any punches. It was woeful. I don't know if it was a bank holiday, so the fact that it's a Sunday shouldn't matter too much. But, we had a full away end, and for large parts of that game, there was only a few of us singing. So next time, and it's happened a couple of times with the top 6 clubs. I'm not going to Colchester tonight, but I'd imagine the Colchester, the atmosphere in that away end will be far superior to the one at Anfield, despite having far fewer fans. Dan, what did you? We don't speak about it enough on the pod because, for me, when we go into these top 6 clubs, maybe it's because the novelty of it's kind of worn off because we're in our 4th season in the Premier League now. But for me, you go into Anfield, they've just increased the stadium. It was a record attendance in there. It was Arne Slot's first game. It was just like, why the fuck wouldn't you sing? Why wouldn't you back the team? I didn't really understand it, Dan.
Yeah, I think you're right. The novelty's worn off. I think we've been to Anfield 4 times, still not scored there, never really threatened for large periods of any of the games. So I think perhaps, on the pitch, we could be doing a bit more that might raise the crowd. But also, I think some of these games now are just going to all members who, you could pay £30 to buy a membership, then 30 quid to buy a ticket, which is probably cheaper than some of the tickets in the Liverpool home end. So, was it even all Brentford fans in that away end? We don't know. But
absolutely not. I saw many tweets of Liverpool fans in the away end. So
yeah, plenty of phones out doing "You'll Never Walk Alone."
It was exactly the same last season, and that was one of the reasons why I said I'm not doing it. My old man, podcast legend Russell, did go. He took my brother with him, and they said that they didn't have as many as there was last year around them tourist wise, but they said it was still very apparent, people out with their phones recording everything that Liverpool did, and it's just stunk the away end out last year, which is why I didn't go this year.
Yeah, agreed. Let's move on to Colchester and Southampton. Colchester is this evening, as I said at the top. We're recording this on a Wednesday morning. Full debuts expected for both Sepp van den Berg and Fabio Carvalho. Dan, be good to see those two get a start from the off.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where exactly Fabio Carvalho starts as well. I'm not really sure at the moment what his best position will be. Obviously on the wings, especially like the left-hand side, we've obviously got Sharda and KLP, and obviously we've got Mbeumo on the right. I don't know where he would fit into a starting Premier League team. Perhaps as a number 10, but we don't necessarily really play with a out-and-out number 10. It's already like an 8 and a 6, but yeah, I'm interested to see where he plays tonight. Hopefully, it's his best position. Hopefully, he can show what he's done in the Championship before. This should be a game where he can really express himself and hopefully get off the mark. And also with Vandenberg, again, we've not really seen anything of him, but obviously I know he had good numbers last season, played in the Championship before that. So I'm expecting him to show us what he can do. And I think against a team that probably might be a bit more physical or might go a bit longer, as League Two teams probably tend to do, I think he should be able to deal with that with his height and his physicality. So yeah, looking forward to it. I think the likes of Konak and Yarmo as well will play. I think we've got, and obviously the keeper as well. We've got plenty of players that we can look forward to seeing for one of the first times tonight. So I'm looking forward to hopefully a good performance from all of them.
Because I've watched Fabio Carvalho at Hull, and I think he did his best work as a 10/false 9 when he was picking up the ball between the lines and then turning on the swivel. That's where he got his good kind of run of goals. I think he scored like 9 in his last 11 games at Hull City in the second half of the season. But where does Damsgaard fit in then, Craig? Do you expect Fabio Carvalho to maybe play as a more advanced midfielder and then Damsgaard to kind of do the Janelt role when he's kind of up and down a little bit?
I don't know. I kind of expect it to be the other way, really. I don't see the problem in playing against like Colchester, where it's an opportunity to experiment a little bit with the players that we've got, the new players coming in. I don't see the problem in just playing a single holding midfielder and 2 players further forward rather than the 2 and then the 1. Play the 1 and then the 2 further forward and let them both have a bit of a, the Premier League footballers, they should be able to decide between the 2 of them who's going to do what. Whether one goes, one sits, one goes. They've got to decide between the 2 of them who's going to do what. But I wouldn't see there a problem in being 1 holding and 2 in front in a game like this, just to try it out, Have 2 players that might be a bit more offensively minded, because then we still leave, 5 at the back, 4 defenders plus your holding midfielder, but then you've got 5 offensive players that are going to be able to create the chances as well. So if it was in the Premier League, I kind of would expect it to be Damsgaard sits and holds and Fab roams around a bit. But in this game, I don't see a problem in both of them having a bit more of an offensive position.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'd love to see either of them in that offensive position. I want to see Damsgaard maybe from the start against Southampton, because there's a couple of sub appearances against Palace and against Liverpool that he's looked really good. But I'll come straight back to you, Craig, for your lineup, or what's this master stroke that you've got for Southampton?
So my master stroke for Southampton is drop Roslev, keep Ayer at left back, and Vandenberg plays at right back. He steps in and plays at right back. He did it for Mainz. He did it for Preston. He did it for Liverpool in pre-season. He stepped in and played at right back as well, and he can do it. So get Roslev out of the team as soon as you possibly can. And I feel terrible saying that. I do feel terrible saying that, because he's, he does his best. But the problem is, how do I say this without being offensive to him? His best isn't good enough for Premier League football. And watching the Liverpool game on the telly, he was our most negative player on the pitch. The ball would be played in front of him, and he had no idea what to do going forward. And he actually had no want in going forward. As soon as he got the ball, there was 2 choices. It was either go back to the goalkeeper or play infield. He did not want to go forward whatsoever. So for Southampton, back 4, go to a back 4 again, because that's what we're going to do at home, especially against Southampton. Ayer at left back, Pinnock Collins in the middle, Vandenberg at right back. Give it a go. Fuck it. Give it a go. Language, sorry.
No, that's all right. It's absolutely fine. We'll come towards the end of the pod anyway, past the watershed. Anyway, against Southampton, Dan, I have watched both of Southampton's first 2 games. A team that very much likes to play football. They were pretty dominated against Forest, which was concerning for 2 reasons. One, because Forest have actually looked quite decent both times that I've watched them this season. And 2, because whenever a team gets dominated and then they come to Brentford, it would be very Brentford for us to go and be shit and lose. But I do think that it will be a good game on Saturday, just because they do like to play football. I think there'll be a lot of gaps. It's got, for me, Burnley at home last season kind of vibes.
Yep.
And I hope that the scoreline is the same as the vibes that I'm getting, because when we played Burnley last season, it was a good game and we won. What are your thoughts post Liverpool, Dan, to wrap up the podcast? There's nothing like a trip to Anfield to bring you right back down to earth. What are your thoughts going into the Southampton game? And we'll wrap it up after that.
Yeah, I definitely think they'll want to keep the ball. I think even against Forest, they had more of the ball than Forest. I'm not really sure what they did with it, looking at the stats, though. Yeah, I expect them to have more of the ball probably again. I think the worry with them is you worry where the goals are going to come. I think the likes of Adam Armstrong is very good at championship level, but never really quite done it in the Premier League. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you're right. It is very similar to the Burnley game. I think if we press them high, there could be some mistakes there at the back, like there was for them against Newcastle. And we just really want to be positive. I think we don't really need Janelle and Norgard in midfield for that game. I think we could do with just one of them, and maybe Damsgaard with Jensen. And just be positive, go for it. I mean, this is a great opportunity in the next few days to put a couple of good performances in. And I think with what Craig was saying about the right back situation, I think we could see perhaps Van den Berg play right back tonight to trial it. Because I don't know who else would be playing full back tonight if we're giving Roslev a rest. And obviously Ben Mee and Jisoo could perhaps play at centre back tonight. So yeah, I think we could trial that tonight. Maybe go with that on Saturday. I wouldn't be too opposed to it. And then yeah, I don't see why we can't put in two good performances in the next few days, and then we'd have long forgotten about Liverpool away until we come to City away after the international break.
Yes, after two wins, one against Colchester tonight and one against Southampton, Europe is back on. I'm here for it. Europe's back on. I think that'll be a good point to wrap up the podcast, gents. The Ealing Road podcast should be back this week for a Southampton preview. I'm just trying to tie up a few loose ends with that one, but hopefully record that tomorrow and get it out tomorrow night, which will be on a Thursday. Just before we go, remember to comment down below, who do you want to see play against Colchester? How are you feeling for the Southampton game? Should Ivan Toney go to Chelsea or Saudi Arabia? Let us know in the comments section. Also, whilst you're at it, remember to subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels, especially to the YouTube one if you want the immediate post-match reaction from the Southampton game on Saturday. And also, last thing, remember to give us a follow on socials. That's at the Ealing Road on Twitter and at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Gents, it's been a pleasure as always.
Up the bees.
There we go. I was waiting for it.